Adam, as an employer, what should you do if you suspect that one of your employees is using alcohol or drugs during work?
Ideally, you have a policy that addresses all the different types of drug testing or screens that you have, from pre-employment to this would be what is considered a reasonable suspicion, or post-accident, post-incident, random, although some companies are eliminating random drug screens, or return to work drug screen. So there's many different types, and ideally you have a policy on that. And in this moment, if you suspect that an employee, you have reasonable suspicion that the employee is under the influence, then you can send that employee out for a drug screen. And this should be all contemplated within your policy. And if that employee tests positive for a banned substance, you can, as an employer, especially in the state of Florida, take disciplinary action, potentially termination, if it violates your drug-free or drug and alcohol policy. So if some things that you need to be careful about are, do you have enough of a suspicion, enough support to send that employee out for the drug screen? Because someone may be acting a little differently, not necessarily because they're under the influences of drugs or alcohol, but perhaps because they're experiencing some type of medical issue. And you have to be sensitive to that. Perhaps you can talk to the employee first to evaluate, is this a medical situation? Is this a drug and alcohol use? Maybe get that confirmation or corroboration before sending that employee out for the drug screen, to eliminate the potential of this being a medical issue. Because if it's a medical issue, then you have to think about, well, is this going to fall under the ADA? Do we need to accommodate this employee? We certainly don't want to discriminate against this employee. So, definitely want to make sure you have enough support and enough data to send that employee out for the screen. And then if the screen tests positive for a banned substance, like I said before, you can issue disciplinary action, or you can have the employee, go into an employee assistance program or something like that.
What about remote companies? Where
So
now that we have so many workers all over everywhere.
that's a really good point. And as I've said before, with remote companies, or where you have employees that are in remote locations, number one, you need to be mindful of that state or that jurisdiction's requirements on drug testing. Certain states have certain rules around, can you even offer a drug test under certain situations, and can you discipline an employee for using a particular substance. So you want to make sure you're knowledgeable of those states' legal requirements. And then secondly, just as an employee in your workplace, you can govern their behavior in your workplace on a physical site, you can also govern the behavior of an employee remotely. So if you suspect that a remote employee is violating your drug and alcohol policy, you want to take the same steps I mentioned before, which is evaluate whether this is, there's enough of a suspicion there, or is this a medical issue? And if there is enough suspicion that there is influence here, you can send that employee out for a drug screen, just as you would as if the employee was on site, and you can take the same disciplinary action. The nuance with this issue is that you now need to be mindful of any of those state laws where the employee is located, which could have an impact on your next steps in this process.